All right, I'm going to get us going here. I think most of you know the team and the different perspectives that we bring. Today's the second in a series of topics specific to Teams and SharePoint, and kind of some of it is when to use what. Some of it is we find ourselves using SharePoint more and more as a place where things are stored, but Teams is the work surface where we spend our time doing the work, and how do we make them work together in that regard. So today we're going to talk through some of the elements of structured business processes and how you'd use them across SharePoint and Teams. We'll talk about some dev topics and leave you with some resources. As always, please come off mute, use the chat. We're going to monitor the chat, keep us posted. This is from a poll, right, that we sent out recently about different use cases for Teams and SharePoint. Last session, 2 weeks ago, we talked about project collaboration. This week, we want to talk a bit more about structured business processes and process automation. So I need to book a trip. I need to onboard a new resource. I need to request a check. Most organizations have systems, forms, processes that support those. And let's talk a little bit about how we use SharePoint and Teams for that. So Julie, I just changed the order of some of the words in here, but when we talked about this, these were some of the scenarios you identified as here's where we see structured business processes today. Do you want to talk through any of this?
I can read the slide, obviously, but so obviously third-party solutions, you've got some business process, it's in some external system, be that a SaaS offering or not, some external system has that process and handles that process. We have obviously Power Platform integrations or other Microsoft 365 apps like Planner, any of those types of solutions built up into those platforms. They might be using something like Dataverse, or it might be in Dynamics, all sorts of places in other places of Microsoft 365 where some of those business processes could be handled. Solutions built using SharePoint artifacts. So that's like lists and libraries in combination with each other to manage a business process, might be using out-of-the-box features of those places. In Classic, we might have put some JavaScript right on the page directly and sort of augmented that business process, but in general, just using those out-of-the-box SharePoint artifacts. And then customized solutions, and this is where we get into the dev story, where we're doing extensibility of the platform, and so we're using the application programming interface layer or RESTful interfaces for the platform as a whole, and bringing some of those pieces of the platform together in some structured way to manage a business process. So those are the various ways I think that the platform can support those various processes.
And Julie, third-party solutions, thinking like tools like ServiceNow, right, that people
Absolutely.
use for service process automation?
Mm-hmm. Could be things like GitHub. I'm going to go straight to the dev versions.
Sure.
That horrid Jira thing that I hated so much, those things. Could be even other tools like, Nintex workflows, external tools that do similar things too. It doesn't have to be, Forms, SurveyMonkey, maybe, whatever, those other platforms.
Got it. So let's jump from that into that application integration story. And I think Mark put a little bit of material for us together about Teams as an application integration surface.
Yeah, the idea here is that, and I think one of the reasons Teams has been so successful, as you can, and sorry about the dog barking, is that you can bring in external applications, some of those third-party applications that you might use inside your enterprise, and use them within the Teams context. So by having all of those different applications available, and I don't remember the number, but it's a big one with lots of hundreds of different applications, you can bring that kind of work inside Teams, which is something you can't do in SharePoint. We have web parts for a few things. We have the Kindle web part, the YouTube web part, but we don't have a lot of other sort of third-party integration points, and that's one of the reasons that Teams, I think, has been really taken off, is and it also becomes a way for IT, in a sense, to bring some of the shadow IT almost in under the fold. You know, if you're using whatever Kippa is, I don't actually know, as an application, and you start to use it within Teams, at least there's some sort of monitoring capability and things like that. So
yeah, Mark, Miro's a great example.
Yep.
Smartsheet is a great example, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, they're things that may not be overlapping with any Microsoft 365 capabilities, or maybe they do, but maybe you have sub pockets of your population that find these things helpful. So what you can do is you can choose one of those apps, assuming that you haven't been locked out of this stuff, which is something that some organizations do. You can connect those apps to your Teams, your Teams application, and then those apps are available to you. The example I have in that thing that Mike just went back from is Viva Insight. So within the same context, I'm looking at a totally different app, and I can interact with what that app does for me without sort of leaving the flow of work. So that's something that Teams has gotten really good at. I, to be honest, haven't seen at least the clients that I work with using a lot of these third-party options, but it's certainly a way to start to bring some integration or process right into Teams.
And I think one of the important things to think about is that, especially in the last year and a half, 2 years, companies are spending more time in Teams because they're working remotely, they're working in virtual teams. So they're leveraging Teams for messaging. They're using Teams for collaboration. Even though there's a SharePoint backend, this is the space, the workspace canvas that they're working in. And so being able to bring these things into Teams, even if they're just a window into the other, into another system, brings it all together and makes it easier for the users.
Derek, I'd love to ask you as a UX person, and Mark as an information architect person, do you see there being a lot of contention about the real estate on the app bar as third-party apps proliferate and connectors proliferate and custom apps proliferate? You want to talk about that a little bit?
I mean, I think personally, from a UX perspective, I have to say it's going to be one of those new battlegrounds. So, it used to be who gets top billing in the global navigation, who gets, right, top billing on the homepage of the intranet. And now it's going to, exactly. Yep. It's going to be who gets that top billing. Now, you can rearrange your admin can rearrange those tabs, and you can put certain things up there. But I do think there needs to be a priority on, there's limited space, and depending on how big your app window is, that gets shrunk down. So I think there is going to be some contention on what gets to go there. Personally, it needs to, I would say it needs to be higher value things, but it can be different things for different people as well. So
meaning Derek, it's top down today, meaning the administrator can dictate that, but I can't personalize the order of my icons in the app bar, I don't think.
You can. You can drag and drop them up and down.
Okay, for the custom ones.
Yeah, no, in our SimPraxis tenant, we haven't locked any of that stuff down, so we can do that.
But that'll only apply to me then, right, Mark?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, just my view.
But as an admin, as an admin, you can roll something out and pin it somewhere. Mm-hmm. So if you have a company directory app and you want that on the top of the app bar, you can absolutely go do that.
Got it.
Oh,
thanks. Let's not forget SharePoint. So I think the presumption behind a lot of this is Teams is where you're going to be spending your time doing your work, right? And when you're virtual or in a hybrid team, that's pretty apparent, right? You're in chat and voice and video calls, desktop sharing all day. But there's still some pretty rich extensibility capabilities in SharePoint that port pretty well or interact pretty well with the Teams platform. So Mark, I think you created a couple of these to talk through.
I didn't.
No,
whose slide was this?
Me.
All right, Julie.
That's okay.
I should have known extensibility equals Julie.
I was just going to be like,
it's a font I like though. So
I think this is more of Derek. There's two of them. So the first page is the ways that you can extend the user experience platform in SharePoint. So we have the oft not known about single app part page. So that's if you build a SharePoint framework solution, you can target it as something that would take over the whole page. So it's a special page type. You can target your SharePoint framework solution for it. And then when you say, I want a new page, there's this sort of hidden tab that where you'll see the templates for the page, but then there'll be a tab if you have any deployed that'll say apps. And in the apps section will be any of the SharePoint framework solutions in your activated in that site collection that are targeted to single app part pages. And it doesn't have to only be targeted to that, but it can be. And so a really good example of that, and I have a screenshot here, is the Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways solution that has when you install that in your tenant, it creates a site collection, and that site collection has the Learning Pathways solution activated in it. And there are two web parts as part of that solution. One is the admin sort of framework, and the other is the viewer web part. And the admin piece of that we pre-provide as a single app part page. So it's this, one experience for administrating learning pathways. And so if you have a custom business solution where it is really an app you're building, and this is something that, Mark and I have been building these sort of they used to be often referred to as spas. There still are, but that nomenclature isn't used as much anymore. But building these sort of solutions for clients that handle a custom business scenario was something we would do constantly, not quite as much anymore, but definitely still happens occasionally. And so that single app part page is really powerful for that. And then, of course, the web parts in SharePoint. So, again, I use the learning pathways for that because the viewer web part can either be on a single app part page, or it's also could be a web part. And you can kind of see that Acme Human Resources page where the learning pathways viewer web part is embedded in the page as a web part. So it's the right 2/3 of that page below the header. So that's the web part itself. And then last, sort of the new kid on the block is the Viva Connections extensibility. So being able to create these adaptive card extensions, or ACEs, and that is that little square. I didn't at the time have the ability to take a screenshot in literally 2 days ago, couldn't take a screenshot in the actual page, but today I could, where those little dashboard cards actually can be put in a special page called a dashboard page. And then that dashboard page can be surfaced on a web part, on a page like your home page of your intranet, in a new preview web part type called a dashboard web part. And so then those cards show up in there and they're interactive, and you can kind of see from the screenshot this particular instance of this kind of card, which is the Team Time Clock or the World Clock app. That's a sample that you can get to. Maybe somebody will post the link in the chat, but at any rate, you can interact with that card. And so in this case, I said view the team, and the team comes up in a bigger window, and there's interactivity with that user experience as well. So those are the ways we can extend the SharePoint surface. Next slide, probably. So then the extensibility options in Teams are similar in that our web parts can also be personal apps. So this is the left rail that we were talking about. And again, we used one of our Viva Connections samples that we built, the COVID attestation app. So that screen on the top right is showing a SharePoint framework web part that's pinned as a personal app. And so that means we're taking up real estate on that left rail. One of the comments I wanted to make about the left rail real estate is that, the admin can pin things to that rail, but they also can just be accessible. So there's obviously that little ellipsis button, and you can press the ellipsis button and it gives you sort of a menu. It's similar behavior to the app bar in the suite, the waffle in the suite. It behaves very similarly to that. So that is a way that you can surface an app similar to the user experience of a single app part page, but you're doing it in Teams. So we're pinning that experience right there. It gives you a full screen sort of visual, and that can be really powerful. And so that's also what Viva Connections is. So when you do Viva Connections, you're just doing a personal app that pins a particular page in your SharePoint site into Teams. So it's just a personal app on steroids is really what the Viva Connection solution is. The other thing there is, so again, I use the world clock as an example here. The world clock also can be surfaced as a personal app, but it also can be surfaced as a Teams tab. And so again, this is just a SharePoint Framework web part, but it's surfaced as a tab in Teams. So again, this is a great way that if you have a business process that's extensible to a team or multiple teams, you can add that as a tab in their team and make that something that they can add themselves, or you can provision for them, or whatever that might be. So that's another way. And then of course I brought back the screenshot of the Viva Connections ACE, because obviously if you have that dashboard web part on a page and you've made that page your home site and you use the Viva Connections to do the, the home site in Teams, then those dashboard ACEs are going to show up in the view of the entire SharePoint page.
And Julie, with regard to ACEs, I can't put them on non-home sites yet.
That's correct at the moment, right?
And I think they said you can now have multiple home sites. I think I saw that announcement this week.
Yes, yeah, and oddly, I don't have anything to say about it because I just discovered it literally an hour ago. But I wanted to go see the dashboard web part because it was now, in preview, public preview, and so we should be able to find it. And when I went to do that, one of the things we know right now is that you cannot make more than one dashboard in a site. So if you've said it's a home site, you get that ability to make a dashboard page. So you create a dashboard page, then you put your ACEs that you want to have displayed on that dashboard page, and then you go to another page like the home page and you add the dashboard web part, and the dashboard web part, without you doing anything, knows that you have a dashboard page. And right now you can only have one of those. And so I'm guessing that's why, but right now I can't create another dashboard page because I already have a dashboard page, I think. But that was missing for me. It's like, I used to be able to, Derek, and this is why I'm a little confused by it, because when I was in the private preview, I was able to create more than one dashboard page. And I think as a testing scenario, that made sense. I think they've now sort of locked it down.
They have. I mean, I've been using the dashboard web part to do some of the testing I'm doing for the ACES repo. And yeah, you can only have it on the home site and you can only have one of them right now. So
well, there it is.
Yeah, but the good news is that you can audience target the ACEs. So if you've got audience targeting, groups that you can audience target to, you can lock it down so that if you have a sales team and you have a sales ACE, you can just show it to the sales team.
In the web part properties, Derek, not in the line of business application underneath it?
It's in the configuration option for the ACE itself.
For the ACE itself, yeah, perfect.
Yeah, when you add it went to the dashboard.
Yep.
You get to decide what audiences to see. Yeah.
Oh, that was my question when Julie said that. I'm like, a training ACE would be great that points to our LMS, but if compliance training in Europe is different from compliance training in the US, how do I do that? I think you just nailed it, right? You got audience.
Yeah, you would create, if you had an ACE that did that, you would have an ACE that was configured to, start at the US compliance home.
Yeah.
And targeted to US employees.
Okay.
Marcel has some questions that very long questions, but I think the answer, Marcel, is that your question is around how do you add and subtract people from teams in bulk? And I think that the quick answer is that, behind a team is a Microsoft 365 group, just like behind a SharePoint team site. So the mechanisms to add and subtract people to Microsoft 365 groups is the answer. You can do that with PowerShell if you have like tons of them. Most organizations have some sort of some sort of process when somebody leaves the company. Todd, you probably have something to add there.
Yeah.
Todd sprung to life when he heard the word PowerShell.
Yeah, I was dozing there.
I wanted to wake him up.
It's chilly in this room. Things are starting to shut down, but yeah. So I think the answer to all, and we also, his first question is a little different from that. So we'll loop back to that, Marcel. So yeah, the quick answer is there is no easy way to do any of those things. That is a big gap here. But there are a number of ways to automate that. We could, we can do it with PowerShell. If we can do it with PowerShell, that means we can do it with an Azure function. So we could write any sort of whatever management interface to do that however you would like. And you and I have worked on stuff before, so if that's something you have questions about, certainly ask me off channel about that. And we can figure something out. Your first one was and this one comes up all the time, is knowing you and knowing that you're a SharePoint person from way back. We're used to having read only, and you can't do that with groups. And whenever I'm talking to people about group permissions, we talk about how there's members and owners, and then SharePoint folks are all like, whoa, what about read only? Teams, and the example that you give is exactly the example that I talk about, is that you can't, having somebody have read only access in SharePoint makes a lot of sense. But in Teams, it's kind of creepy. People who can read a Teams chat but not contribute are called lurkers and generally frowned upon. And so, but I've been telling that joke for like 5 years now. But the problem becomes, as businesses move more towards Teams, like all the stuff we've been talking about, having repositories of things like HR documents, vacation policies, and all that kind of thing. Having a team be the place where people go to that is starting to make more sense. But you don't want them getting in there, so now we have to find a way to surface that data in Teams in a way that they don't have. Because as far as I know, there is no way to give somebody read-only access to a team.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
And I think the sort of executives wanting to be able to drop into any team is also a little creepy.
Yeah.
I totally get the ask, but I think that if they had that permission, they'd probably end up hating it, because there would just be so much stuff coming their way that they wouldn't be able to make any sense out of it.
I think you would break search for them by doing that.
Yeah, it would be ugly for a bunch of reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the entire user interface for Teams is not really designed for somebody to have more than 20 teams. So if you're in a large organization and you're using Teams for project management, and there's 100 active projects, like an executive having 100 projects in the left rail in their list of teams, trying to figure out which ones are highlighted, that would be useless.
I'll just restate the comment I just made in the chat, just in case people can't see the chat. But there was a chat conversation going on about having around the having multiple home sites, and then we were talking about right now you can only have one dashboard page per site. And I think what maybe is going to be interesting there, because Derek was saying, it changes the conversation when you can have multiple home sites with then thereby having multiple dashboards. And I think right now what the vision there is since you can only have one dashboard page, the dashboard web part would link to whatever dashboard page is in that site. And so maybe the interesting thing there is an audience targeting solution, right? So if you could have like a home site that you more directed towards, let's say, your frontline workers, or the sales floor staff, or whatever it might be, kind of thing, you could then target those home sites and teams to those groups. And so then having a dashboard that was directed to things they need, that's kind of an interesting use case, but we'll have to see, right? Because then you really do, I think, eventually want to be able to have multiple dashboard pages sort of set up with a group of things, even though you can audience target I don't know. It's a lot of moving blocks, right?
Yep.
To Jay's question that he just posted, I think we are in fact saying that because we saw it announced at Ignite. We don't know precisely what it means in terms of what it will let us do in the short term with multiple versions of dashboard, et cetera. But I think we did see multiple home sites.
Yeah, that was announced, but as Derek pointed out, we haven't actually seen it show up.
Yeah, right. Bang on it.
Yeah.
Some good questions here. Should I read out Mike's?
Yeah, I
Sure.
was trying to read it. Yeah.
Yep. Solution built with document sets on a team site, not the default library. We're trying to pull up a version history of a doc set. Nothing comes up. We're aware of a known issue due to the lack of modernization of doc sets, or is there a bigger or different issue here? Anybody know that off the top of their head, or we have to
Well,
probably
a doc
bang
set
on that?
is a folder.
Right.
Yeah.
However, doc sets, to create doc sets, you still have to use the list view web service. I haven't done it in so long that I don't even know how well those web services are behaving. But theoretically, it's a folder. Are you trying to go at it with code? Poorly.
Well, if he's looking at it in the UI, then
Yeah.
I've found that with document libraries in a tab in Teams, you don't get the full experience yet, though that is improving. So seeing version history, I don't think you can do with any document. And a document set is, an object in a document library. I could be wrong. It's definitely changed over time.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer to that without digging in.
I find myself hopping back over to SharePoint mainly because I'm a SharePoint guy when I'm looking at files in Teams, because it just doesn't give you the full experience.
Yeah, I agree. I know too much about what's going on in the background to use Teams because I keep running into spots where, feel the same way.
I think that Caleb's comment is a great topic for a future Ask Some Praxis. We can do a presentation from the island of misfit toys.
Yes.
About
seriously,
lost or
maybe our
forgotten
Christmas
features.
Episode.
Oh.
Our Christmas
Hasn't
episode.
Andrew Connell published a couple of emails, open emails to Microsoft along those lines?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
more
we'll steer
SharePoint.
away from those,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. But you're right. Yes, this is more the features,
All right.
right? Like Mike is pointing out, document sets are like the redheaded stepchild, sadly.
Right.
Yeah.
Community sites.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds
Yeah.
of things that are on the
More like
dustbin.
Narnia.
oh,
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and
But they have
doc-
the telemetry, right?
whatever.
They always say they have telemetry that says that,
Read
X
mine.
feature is not in use and Y feature is. But when you actually ask them what the telemetry, like what are the numbers, nobody really knows. It's rumor and innuendo.
I agree with you, Mike Dixon. Doc sets are cool and were super functional. And I do come up with mental reasons why I'd like to have them again. I don't touch them simply because they're being abandoned. And I'm taking that as sort of like, like if Microsoft isn't touching it for this long, will it survive?
Right, should we invest
and
in
I'd
it?
rather,
Right.
right. And so I don't know anything. I just,
But that's a classic
point.
one though, where they've said that the usage is really, really low, and then they sort of neutered them in modern. So now the usage is going even lower, and
yeah,
they're proving their own point.
right.
I thought I had heard a rumor that modernization was coming to that.
They
So did I.
started and then they stopped. So
Okay.
you see them in the modern library, but you don't have the welcome page. Otherwise,
Right.
they sort of work the way they always have, but not as well.
Yeah, and
I
for the
also
most
wonder-
part, I'm coupling this with a Power Apps interface for the most part, but I don't have version control to monitor changes made to the metadata at the document set level. That's the
Right.
one layer that I'm missing.
That's the API that they'd never updated.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that list service. And you're right that it is a REST call in the way that you think of it, but under the covers, that's the list service SOAP service still. It's just, they got so far as to restify it, but it's still, ooh, I just invented a word.
Restify.
I like it.
Really?
Oh, no.
They restified it. It's like rustifying. No, okay, never mind.
All right.
I'll let it go. Anyway, but it is the list view.
Rastafari.
Restafarians.
Yeah,
That's
That
yeah,
was
that
right.
was
All right,
yeah.
next
where
slide.
I was just a
Trying
little
to-
suffer, Mike, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I couldn't watch anymore.
That was too
And
painful.
Mark and Mark and Mike Dixon, I think it'll be interesting to see how some of the newly announced document assembly capabilities will work in document sets. Like I could see that one paragraph summary of scope being used across a proposal document, a statement of work document, like all an NDA,
Point, Mike.
etc.
Maybe that's the thinking. Maybe they're sort of modernizing them in that way, and we'll
Maybe
get
doc assembly kind of precludes some of the stuff we're seeing in doc sets. I don't know. I don't have that level of insight.
Yeah.
But it was an
I'm
interesting
sorry,
announcement.
can you elaborate on the doc assembly thing? I haven't heard of this at all.
It was announced at Ignite this week, and it's basically it's stuff you've seen before with kind of fluid framework demos where you can grab an atom and use it across a bunch of documents and kind of assemble documents based on the pile of atoms that you have.
It's like the old SharePoint slide library, except they reinvented it yet again.
Across applications too.
Right.
Yeah, isn't that what they're calling loop with fluid?
No.
I don't think loop is. I think loop is different.
Different. No. Yeah.
That's a good tease. I know we're over time.
Loop.
I thought that's exactly what loop was.
Loop is fluid.
No.
Yeah.
But that's not the document.
That's not document assembly though. I don't think.
Oh.
But it's the same idea, taking components and putting.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Joy has a good segue for us.
Let's Ignite recap.
We're waiting, Joy. We're waiting for you to send yours.
What did Emily post earlier via Twitter? The news book.
Yeah, the book of news.
The book of news is
the best thing to look
the best I've seen. It's really outstanding.
Yeah, I haven't downloaded it. I just haven't looked yet.
Yeah, these are some resources for based on stuff we talked about today. But in 2 weeks, give us a little bit of time to digest all that we're hearing and learning at Ignite, and formulate a Simpraxis position on it, and then hopefully we can be among the best Ignite recaps for Joy and others. So 2 weeks from today at 12:30 on the 17th, we'll dig in a bit on all the high points of Ignite. We probably will not be joining as avatars using Teams Mesh. It's probably
and
a
we
no.
will all have pants, hopefully.
Appeared from Mark and Julie's conversation as a hard no.
That is absolutely a hard no.
It's a hard no. So otherwise, thank you everybody for joining us. I know we're at the end of our time. We appreciate the questions, the lively conversation today, and we'll plan to talk in 2 weeks. Feel free to keep the conversation going via Twitter, via the chat that's open, etc. Anything else?
No, that's great.
Nope.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all.